School choice to me is when you're choosing either public school or private school.
School choice is when parents make the choice to send their children to either a public school, private school, charter school, homeschool, whatever they see best fit for their children.
The choice to choose your own school that you want to go to.
To choose what kind of education you want, I guess what level between public, charter, private schools.
It's choosing what kind of school to send kids to.
I don't know.
School choice is the ability for a family to send their kid to either public or private or charter school.
School choice is pretty much where parents can go through and pick what schools they want their kids to go through, whether it's private, charter, actual public school, and they could potentially receive a voucher for that.
I think school choice is like, because I mean, I'm just thinking of like, okay, school obviously is where you're going to get your education from, and a choice is like a decision. So like from that, I would think school choice is the decision on where you go to school. So whether that be like just in what I think of as a public or private school.
School choice.
School choice.
By choosing a school that you want to go to.
I feel like it's being able to like make your own decision and where you want to get your education, maybe.
School choice is choosing what school you want to go to.
Partly, I don't even think. Well, I think like if you're of a higher economic standing, your motivation for school choice would be to send your child to a maybe a preparatory school that you're able to afford. So maybe they can get maybe a better education and like be more focused on with less kids. And if you have that money, you're able to spend it on that. But like if you live like in a very urban area and your child has to go to an inner city public school, like there is no motivation. Like because in your heart, you can want to send your child to the best public or private school in your state or wherever you live, but like due to circumstances, it has to be at a public school that, I don't know, it's just maybe they don't get as much attention or whatever. So I think for a higher economic standing, your motivation is to any motivation would be to like further your kids and their careers, but at times like you don't have that choice, so I don't think there is motivation if you're of a lower economic standing.
I think people have different reasons for going to different schools and want different things from schools.
The motivation to me probably is to give their children a better opportunity to succeed in life.
Quality of education, I would say.
Find the best education possible.
The motivation, I would say different motivations for different people, of course. If you want your child to be in a private school, then you probably want their education is going to be different than if they were in a public school. So your motivation for being in a private school is maybe to be more sheltered or to learn a certain way. And for public school, it could just be you want them to experience everything that the real world offers, but it just depends with each parent.
Well, I guess when choosing the schools, I guess parents just want what's best for their kids. So whatever they think is best for them, that's the school they put them in.
Well, for private school, it would cost money, so lower income families couldn't send their kids to a school where there may be more highly educated professors and better programs.
Yeah, I'd say so. Can't really think of any right now, but I guess an advantage of public school would be that you don't have to pay for it. But then again, for private school, I assume you'd be paying for higher quality education. So I don't know. I went to public school, so I wouldn't really know that much about private schooling.
I do think there are benefits. I think that the public school system, depending on what area or district that you're in, that child may not receive quality education. So if a family is on a lower end of the spectrum as far as districts goes, if they can move their child to a higher district or if they can go to a charter school, there is much benefit. It's been proven that there's benefit for it.
I think it is a matter of preference. So some people prefer public school and some people prefer private schools, and it's all because of your own reasoning and what you want and the pros and cons that you see with both.
and quite a few of my friends that I went to high school and elementary and middle school with.
How did they take advantage of them?
Well, of the school choice or the magnet and stuff?
Any of it?
Oh, well, I know like our guidance counselors, especially middle school, like would not get off of us about picking a good high school and thinking about the colleges that you wanted to go to and making sure you kept your grades at a decent average for those schools and stuff.
I'm not familiar with the American education system, so I cannot answer this question. I don't know anybody.
I don't think so.
I know quite a few people who have taken advantage of charters. I used to work with kids who were at risk, and I have a friend that's actually I have 2 friends that have started charter schools, and their kids have benefited greatly from it.
I think it can work either way. It can benefit, but it would be good for lower income families to have more choices.
I believe so. You always have that choice to go wherever you want, but sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult for others than it is for like the people that have the greater opportunities and might have more income to apply to many different schools, whereas the lower income families might only be able to apply to 1 or 2.
I think it's benefited high-income families more.
I think it benefits both sets of kids, and I think that way for 2 reasons. For low economic status kids, I think they gain exposure to quality education, as well as gaining exposure to others who are not like them. It gives them more to reach for, and it broadens their horizons for who they can be. For higher economic status kids, I think it gives them, again, a reach to kids who are of a different financial status. It gives them empathy, and it builds the empathy for them, and it teaches them to work with people who are different from them, so as they get out into society, they know how to work with differences versus judge it.
I think that probably it's benefited more students that have a higher economic status, just because they're the ones that really get to choose and they can pick where they want to go to school and what they want in a school. But people that have a lower economic status don't have as much of a choice, because charter schools and private schools are all going to cost more than a public school, obviously. So I think that students and families that are lower in the economic status are just not going to have as much of an option.
I think it benefits students from high income families, because normally people with more income have more options for school choice.
I think it could go either way. I think if you come from a poor area, then the schools might kind of dumb down their standards. So you might want your kid to go to a private school to ensure they get a better education, or I guess for higher economic status, if you didn't want your kid to go to a public school, then once again you could send them to a charter school or a private school.
Well, I went to a public school, so I believe that it kind of gives you just like a variety of options kind of to see between like the schooling that you receive. But as far as like a higher economic status, I believe that school choice is important for like a public school, maybe just because like the more money that you put into the school, the more that they're going to actually try to give you a better education.
I don't know, I feel like it's harder for kids with low economic status because money is obviously more of an issue and the quality of education is usually more expensive for better quality, so yeah.
So throughout the whole process of doing this project and completing the interviews and meeting with different people to discuss what they thought was school choice and the motivation behind school choice and how it affected students from high economic statuses and low economic statuses, I think Rachel and I really learned a lot of interesting things. I think we were surprised by a few things as well. One of the things that she and I talked about that was kind of surprising to us was the overall lack of knowledge from a lot of the people that we interviewed. A lot of the people just didn't really, they gave us a very basic answer for each of the questions, such as like when we asked what they thought school choice was, most of them just gave us the option of public or private school. No one really mentioned homeschooling, charter schooling. And another thing that we got from this was that it seemed like for a lot of these people, if it didn't really affect them, they didn't really seem to care as much, or they didn't really seem to want to know as much. One thing that we did notice was the older people that we interviewed seemed to know a lot more in terms of what school choice was and how it affected people. With the exception of one professor that was interviewed who is not from the United States originally. I think he's French, and he didn't really seem to know much about like the American school system. Another interesting aspect of doing these interviews is that we realized most people believed that school choice helped those who were from like a lower social economic status instead of a high social economic status. But what we know from our class, of course, is that although it's supposed to help lower income students, it really doesn't. It actually helps the high income students more because they have a lot more choice than these low income students do.
Along with what Anna Gray was saying about the overall lack of knowledge, it was also evident that bits and pieces of what people knew were missing. For example, when the few people we interviewed who actually mentioned charter schools were discussing them, they mentioned all of the positives and how greatly they benefited students and what a great asset they were to the educational world, which is very true. But at the same time, many negatives are also proven, including resegregation, lack of standards, and inattention to diversity. So while people knew bits and pieces of the information behind charter schools, the whole story wasn't there. Another thing that stood out to us was that the answer when asked what was the motivation behind school choice. Before the project, we really thought that religion would be one of the main answers, especially being in the South here at Clemson. And while we got one answer that related to religion, I think is very interesting that religion seems to take precedent over many people's lives in the southern region, especially in the southern region of the United States. And parents choose to send their kids to parochial schools or to private schools to intertwine religion and education, or even homeschool their children. And nobody seemed to bring that up when we were interviewing. Also, another thing that we found interesting was that nobody really knew what a voucher was or went into detail about how they're beneficial. I don't think we were really expecting for individuals to know exactly what they were, because I didn't before taking this class. But after learning how common they are within the low-income population in the United States, I think it goes back to not knowing the basic facts about school choice in general and or the educational system. So that was interesting that there's a lot of knowledge that people did not have. And through this process, by interviewing students and faculty at Clemson, just based on the setting, we realized that most likely we received answers from individuals who came from middle-class families, which could be why they didn't know the answers to the questions such as what is a voucher / what does a voucher do. I know through this class this semester, Anna Gray and I have learned an enormous amount, and after doing this project, can really tell that most of at least Clemson's population, or the people we have interviewed, do not know a lot about school choice, which ultimately means they probably don't know a lot about any of the subjects that we have thoroughly discussed. And that's important, I think, for our future generations to really be exposed and to have the opportunities. So yes.